Hi, I'm Todd Baginski. Thanks for watching my video. Boy, I haven't made a video in a couple years. It's been a while, but this one is pretty cool. In this video, I'm going to show you how to detect when a Power App, a model-driven or a Canvas Power App, or a Power Automate flow is created in a given Power Platform environment. I will then also show you how to send yourself an email to tell you when one of these items has been created in your environment. Now, I know that you can do this via things like the Center of Excellence kit, but I've had many people say, is there a different way that I can do that where I don't need to install the entire Center of Excellence kit because I don't need it all yet in my organization? And so that's how I embarked down this road to see if it could be done in a way without installing the whole Center of Excellence. So I'm going to get started here in just a bit and show you how I went about doing it. Hope it comes in handy for you too. Okay, so before I get started, I'd like to give a shout out to my co-worker Booth Chen, who I worked on this with. He figured some of these things out and which actions we needed to put in the flows, and I figured a couple out myself too, so it was a good team effort on this one. So this is the solution that I've created that I have my 3 flows in. You'll notice Cloud Flow here, here, and here. These are just the connection references to the different connectors that we use to do things. You'll see these in a bit as I dive into how these flows are constructed. So the flows that we have, the first one's called Detect and Notify New Canvas Power Apps. The second one is Detect and Notify New Cloud Flows. And the third one is Detect and Notify New Model-Driven Apps. So you may right off the bat be saying to yourself, well, why do you have one for Canvas apps and one for model-driven apps? Well, it's because there's 2 different ways you go about detecting if a model-driven app or a Canvas app has been created in the environment with these approaches that I'm taking here that don't require you to create a custom connector and read from the audit log or anything complicated like that. I'm just using out-of-the-box connectors here to make these determinations. You will notice that one of the connectors that I use is a premium connector, and that one is for the model-driven apps. Okay, so those are the 3 different flows that we have, and I'm going to do a demonstration of how these work now to show you that the detection does work. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bounce over to the Power Apps, and I'm going to quickly create a new Power App. And after I create this app, I'm going to run my flow. And then after I run that flow, you'll see that an email is delivered that tells me, hey, a new Power App was made in your organization. So here's my new Power App. All I have to do is save my great new app. And after I have saved that app, now I can close it. And I have a new app in this list here. And we will see the great new app appear shortly. It's taken a little bit, but I can tell you it's definitely there. So now that I've created my app, that was a Canvas app that I made. I'm going to go to Detect and Notify New Canvas Power Apps flow. And I'm going to kick that flow off and run it here. So here I will go run this flow and just kick it off manually. Now this is a scheduled flow. I have it set to run at 10 a.m. my local time every day. You could set it to be on whatever recurrence you want or manually triggered, whatever you'd like. So I now have a new email from that one, and we can see that it was run at 11:47 a.m. A new Canvas Power App has been created in the default environment, and there is the ID for my default environment, including its GUID, and then who created it. So I was able to glean some of these details automatically, as you'll see in the flow, like the environment ID there, as well as the user who created it. I was also to pull out the name of the app, the app's ID, and then a link here to actually open the app. So I just clicked it and I went to the new app, and as we know, there's not even a control on it, but that's my new app. I created my great new app, as we can see in the title bar. So we've got that successfully sent to us there as well. And so this was another app that I created within the last 24 hours in this environment as well. So I left that one in there to demonstrate to you that for every single app that this finds that was created in the last 24 hours, you will receive an email. Now, if no new Canvas apps were found, I can probably go find one in the past that told me that. Here's a day when no new Canvas apps were found. This is what the email would look like when the flow runs. It just says no new Canvas apps were found in the environment today. So we can see that this works very nicely. And now we can dig in and see really how we built this. So it's pretty simple, actually, how this flow works, which is one thing I really like about it. So what I did was I created a new flow and I gave it the recurrence trigger and I told it to recur once every day. As I mentioned before, you have a big list of options on how often you want this to happen. So then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call this get apps as admin. And when I call this action here, what I am allowed to do is specify the environment, and I didn't change the API version or the skip token or anything under advanced here. I left it all default. I'm assuming there's not going to be 250 new apps created in a given day in a certain environment. If there is, you've got a heck of an IT department cranking those apps out. But at the same time, then you could just adjust your flow to handle more than 250 at a time with the page size or whatever. But the key point here is that I'm telling this action, get me all the apps for the default environment. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to initialize a variable that's simply a Boolean variable and set it to false and say var bool new app found. Was a new app found? Not yet. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through all of the values returned from get apps as admin. And there I'm going to do an evaluation. And I'm going to say, was the created time property greater than this expression? And this expression that I wrote right here of get past time, 1 and then day, and then the day format basically means 24 hours ago. And since I have my flow scheduled to run once every day, this essentially is saying since the last time this flow ran, are there any new apps? By comparing it against when all the apps were created. So this is a very, very simple piece we can take here and copy out, make it a little bit bigger and easier to see. So that's what that looks like. So after I put that in there, this helps us determine was the app created in the last 24 hours. If it was, then we're going to send an email. And so here I'm going to send it to my admin account. The subject is new Canvas Power App found. And here's that dynamic information I talked about. So I'm using HTML here to generate the hyperlink at the bottom. And this was the property called app open URI. That's the one that opens the app. And here's the app ID. It's called the name property here. The app name is called the display name. And as we saw on the top, I used that display name again right here. And then here is actually the environment name property. Notice in the slashes and the pop-up there, /properties, /environment, /name. So this is the name of the environment. That's how I pulled that dynamically. So every time a new app is found, because we're still in this loop up here, we're going to fire that email off, and then we're going to set that variable. You already know what it is, right? Variable new app found to true. So after that loop gets completely done, it's gone through every one. If it found a new one, it sent an email. If it didn't, it did not send the email. At the very end, we double check that variable and say, was a new app found? If it's equal to true, don't do anything. We already sent the emails when it was on a one-by-one basis. But if no new apps were found out of anything that day, here's where we send the no new Canvas Power Apps found. And that's very simple, isn't it? If we look at the big picture on really what's happening here, It's very simple. Start up daily, go get the apps, loop through them all and send an email if you found a new one. If you didn't find a new one, send an email to tell someone about that. So very simple pattern and easy to implement. You can also test it by running it right here and kick it off the same way I ran it before. So that is the detect new Canvas Power Apps. But what about a model-driven app? So let's go inspect the model-driven app. Now, model-driven app is a little bit different, and I didn't know this the first time that I had written the flow. I assumed that get all apps or list apps as admin that we saw in the previous flow is bringing back all of them. But then I went and created a model-driven app, and I didn't see it show up in my email. And I was like, what is going on? So I looked into what was being returned in the last one, and it's just Canvas apps. So I thought, okay, how do I go find out where the model-driven apps are getting created? Well, Dataverse to the rescue. I'm following the same pattern here in this flow that detects my model-driven apps. I start up and run it once per day. Then, this is the only difference really essentially in the whole flow. Everything after this action follows the same pattern of initializing the variable, looping through things, making the comparison, sending the email, etc. It's all the same, except for this. There is this list rows I'm using for Dataverse to go after the model-driven apps table. That's it. As you can see, I didn't change anything. I just went after the model-driven apps table. So that's all it is I can show you everything else here is the same. Was a new app found. We're going to loop through the return of everything from Dataverse there. And then we're going to check on the created on column. I have the same exact expression in here. Nothing has changed there. So then, again, sending the email, what I did find was a slight difference here. I found a lot less metadata available about the model-driven apps compared to the data set that was returned about the Canvas apps. And so here, I just have data that says the app name. It's not to say there aren't other pieces of data that are informative, but there weren't as many, and I couldn't generate a link based on what came back from this table. In the condition at the bottom, it's very boring. Again, this is the no new apps were found, but here's the no new model-driven apps were found. So this one is equally easy to test. We pick new app, go to model-driven, and this time we'll make a super app. And as soon as this one is created and saved, I can kick off the other flow, and we can watch that this one will detect and notify that this has been created as well. So while that model-driven app is doing its thing to crank up, I want to jump back here and take a look at the how do we detect the flows. So here is detect and notify cloud flows. So the use case here is when someone makes a new flow, I want to know about it. So I'm going to come in and pop this guy in edit mode. And I wasn't sure which pattern I was going to have to follow based on the fact I had to follow two different patterns slightly to determine when a new Power App was made. Well, it turns out that just like the flows for the Canvas Power App, we have the list flows as admin. So this comes out of the Power Automate for administrators, I believe. And you'll see here list flows as admin. All it takes is the argument of environment to. So I didn't change anything except this is the environment I want to be alerted on. Again, make my variable, then loop through everything. This turns out to be flow is the same one, created time. Again, the same exact expression I'm using right here. Sending an email again. Like we saw with when we had the list apps as admin, this time I have list flows as admin, very similar action. This one also provides me a lot of metadata, so I can pull out the name, the ID, and the state, which I thought was fun, and just tell you if it's on or not. Maybe it's alarming to find a new flow in your environment that's running, and it's less alarming to find a new flow in your environment that's not running. So I thought that I would put that in there. It might be able to help make a decision on how urgent it was to react to this. Again, setting the variable to say no new flow found in this case, and then when that happens, send an email and let them know. Nothing to worry about today. So that's how that you would create these different flows and things that we have in here. And if we come back to our Power App suite, we've got this one ready to go. So I can go ahead and publish that one. And while that's going, I might as well go create a new flow so we can demonstrate the flow aspect too. So we'll jump in here to the flow page. There we go. New instant cloud flow. And this flow is awesome. Manually triggered, create. And we'll just save that one. Oh, that's right. You need to have an action. I know an easy one to do. Let's just initialize a variable. There we go. Was the flow run? That'll tell us it was. There, cool. So we've got that saved now. This flow has been saved. This is awesome. Now we can come back. We've got our super app published here. And let's just head back to our solution now and kick off the one to run. The button always moves around. Where's the run button? Here we go. All right, so go detect and notify our new Cloudflow. Hit done. It's amazing how fast these things go. After we've done that one, then we will come back. I can see the little icon up here. We've got the email. A new flow has been created. This is one that was created yesterday within the last 24 hours as well. So it's good to see that it's working for more than one. We'll wait for that other email to show up too. And then we have our create and notify new model-driven apps. We haven't run that one yet to test it. And now we can come back in here and run this one too. Nothing different from what we saw before. Same exact process, run all those. And then in a moment, we'll have the email. And there's a moment. And here's our new model-driven Power App that has been created, named my Super App. So as we can see, it is very easy to create these particular pieces of the puzzle. I want to show you too, if we come to the flows page here, and just remind you what I talked about at the beginning. Here are those three that we just looked at, and check it out. Here is the one that's the premium, the new model-driven apps. So you'll need the premium connector to do that, but for detect and notify cloud flows, detect and notify new Canvas apps, you won't need that connector for that. As I mentioned before, you can easily package this all up into a nice solution in your environment like this, and put in connection references and make it very portable so you can take it from one spot to another. So I hope this is helpful for you, and that if you're considering trying to figure out how to detect and notify these things are made in your environment, maybe that's because you're trying to keep your default environment clean and do work in other places. I've seen that as a common ask by many people, and I know that's why the COE addresses this issue too. I'm not trying to replace the COE with what I've got here. I'm just trying to make another way to do part of the COE without installing the entire COE. So hopefully this functionality comes in helpful for you, and keep on power apping. Have a good one.